Trixie's Forest Retreat. By Crow's Crow. Chapter 82. Regular. The morning sun slowly climbed through the cloudless sky, radiating warmth to all the early birds out and about in Ponyville. Letting out a long, drawn-out yawn, Trixie blinked groggily against the dim light. She'd forgotten to take down the cloth pinned over the window, but really, maybe she would leave it up after all. It was a much more gentle awakening than getting the sun in her eyes. A strange, soft noise could be heard on her left. Breathing? A quick glance revealed Fluttershy was sleeping next to Trixie. A smile spread across Trixie's lips as she noticed that Fluttershy was much closer than before, gently breathing into her ear. At some point during the night she had scooted closer, which was just adorable. An odd noise drew Trixie's gaze a little lower. Fluttershy was chewing on something while she slept. She chews the blankets in her sleep. That's just too cute. Gah. Wait a minute. Trixie's eyes widened as she recognized the pale blue locks trapped in Fluttershy's mouth. My mane. Trixie was not sure what on earth had possessed Fluttershy to take a bite out of her mane, but she had to stop her quickly. Fluttershy? Hey, Fluttershy, wake up. The chewing stopped, and a confused pair of eyes fluttered open. Muff, fumf. Num? Fluttershy paused as she was unable to form any proper words and glanced down, then turned beet red. She slowly raised her eyes back up to meet Trixie. Looks as though you left your side of the bed. Trixie smirked, and gave a little tug on her mane. Can Trixie have her mane back? All she could do was hope that the damage wasn't too bad. Sputtering, Fluttershy quickly relinquished Trixie's mane and covered her face with her hooves, practically dying with embarrassment. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. Trixie pulled back her mane, and glared at Fluttershy with the intention of making Fluttershy feel her stab burn through those shielding forelegs. Of all the times for Fluttershy to show some odd new thing about herself, it had to be sleep chewing, on the most enchanting mane in Equestria, right before an important date. You will pay for this, Fluttershy. This isn't so bad, Trixie thought. Nervously, she trotted through the market streets of Ponyville, carrying a saddlebag with the pleasant tune of some bits jingling to the rhythm of each step. Unless they're lulling Trixie into a false sense of security. To the town's credit, she had not been physically assaulted yet, unless a, supposedly accidental, shoulder bump counted. Instead, most ponies ignored her as they would any other unfamiliar mare. Some would even give her a polite smile, but Trixie could see the occasional double take by some. There was the rare suspecting glare by a few others, but fortunately no pony lingered. Instead they soon shook their heads and went about their own business. It seemed to Trixie as though she was not being recognized. Now that she thought about it, most ponies had not seen her a la natural. Even during the Ursa Minor incident she had benefited from the cover of darkness for the most part. When she was being carried through the town, she had worn a hospital gown, not to mention she looked awful that day. Any other time, she had been adorned in her distinctive, magnificent cape and hat. Currently torn up beyond recognition and missing in action respectively. Her chest ached, but she couldn't do anything about it, not yet. At least her misfortune actually worked out in her favor for once. Trixie absent-mindedly paused by a random fruit stand filled with nothing but apples, though really it was just to have an excuse to stand still, and sneak a quick look behind her. The sight of a pale pink mane carefully weaving through the crowd brought a smile to her face. Though she couldn't hear it, she was sure Fluttershy was mumbling apologies to anyone she thought she cut off. Fortunately, crowd was a too big a word to describe the turnout on the market, compared to some of the more bustling cities that Trixie had visited. A place like a shopping mall in Manhattan, now that would be an amusing situation to picture Fluttershy in. Trixie doubted she would ever get anywhere. Even in Ponyville, Fluttershy would have fallen behind long ago, if it wasn't for Rainbow Dash trotting right alongside her, and speeding things along whenever necessary. It was easy to tell when that was, as Dash had no problem loudly clearing a path. Who just stops in the middle of the road? Move. It was easy to tell that Rainbow Dash was not used to walking through a crowd at all, as the frustration was painfully clear in her voice whenever she lost patience with the whole thing. Obviously, flying above the crowd was more Dash's speed, but if she was constantly circling overhead like some kind of confused hawk, it would attract even more attention than her occasional outburst. Besides that, they would have lost Fluttershy somewhere at the start of town. Though by this point, Trixie had to wonder if an escort was really needed. If she was not recognized at all, then the only way she could get into trouble was if she identified herself. It's a good thing Trixie does not give out her name to every random pony she meets. Wait. This might have proven to be a problem for any lesser pony, but Trixie was fairly sure she would be able to keep a lead on it as long as she remembered. This won't be hard, all Trixie. All I have to do is talk like a boring pony, I mean normal. No wait, definitely. Can I help you, miss? You've been standing there for a while now. Realizing she was still staring at her friends, as if she had never heard of the concept of sneaking a quick peek, Trixie jerked her gaze back to the fruit stand. A painful little snapping sound vibrated through her neck. She was pretty sure that couldn't be good for her, but it faded as soon as it came. Wah. No. Just looking for now, she said, pretending to be completely focused on the apples for sale. Trixie? Trixie froze up solid. Her cover had been blown. Well, I was just thinking about you. Applejack smiled at her. You're looking much better, Sugar Cube. I wasn't expecting you to be out and about on your own just yet. You ain't pulling another harebrained stunt, are you? Applejack chuckled while she picked up one of the apples. She inspected it briefly, then casually threw the apple over to Trixie. On the house, or the farm, I guess. The apple bounced off Trixie's head, snapping her out of her frozen state. Trixie felt her heart beating in her throat after she was recognized, but fortunately it was only Applejack. Still, she gave a quick look around. Apparently no pony else had heard or cared. Carrot Top. You want that rainstorm over your crop this week? Then move your flank. Applejack gasped, and quickly walked around her stall. Oh. I am mighty sorry about that, Sugar Cube. I wasn't thinking. You okay there? Rubbing the brand new sore spot on her head, Trixie ducked down to pick up the apple. It was bruised worse than Trixie was. Ugh. I should have known. Can't trust a farm pony to go 5 minutes without throwing a fit, hootenanny, or produce. Good thing I've acquired a taste for your bruised apples, Applejack. Chuckling, Applejack shook her head. I reckon that means you're fine then. Really, I ain't rightly sure if that was an insult, or a compliment, but I guess both are fitting. Applejack raised an eyebrow. Anyway, how come you're talking like that? It ain't like here, Trixie shot a hoof up, and stuffed the apple into Applejack's mouth to interrupt her. She leaned in and hissed quietly. SHH, Trixie is incognito, she whispered, then quickly pulled away again. See, I told you it would taste just fine. A bruised apple is still worth every bit. Applejack chewed on the apple with a thoughtful look on her face while she observed Trixie. Finally, she swallowed, and tipped her hat back. I guess I see what you're talking about. All right, Sugar Cube. Thank you. She had not heard Dash yell in a while, and a quick check confirmed she and Fluttershy were at a stall nearby, attempting to look inconspicuous. Trixie smiled, then something in her mind shifted gears as she realized this was a perfect opportunity to try something new. Hey, Applejack. How is the family? They're fine, I reckon. Why do you ask? Applejack looked confused. Trixie just frowned while she shook her head. Come on, work with me. Like is Big Mac still injured? Applejack looked at Trixie with a look of complete confusion, though she played along. Well, no. Was just a few bruises, healed up real nice ages ago. Though I reckon if Granny Smith had found out he skipped his appointment he might have been in worse shape. Huh. Oh, ugh. I did not meet her last time, did I? Trixie wished she was not so obviously bad at the whole first-person thing, but it would have to do. A brief look over her shoulder revealed Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy had moved over to a water fountain, doing their very best to look casual while they talked. Keeping their distance, they threw sideways glances towards Trixie, waiting for her to start moving again. Nah, Granny was off to the school. Seems like April Bloom, that smiles, ain't paying much attention in class no more. Trixie nodded a bit, then pressed on. Why do you think that is? Well, that ain't too hard to figure out. She's getting anxious about her cutty mark. The number o blank flanks in her class keeps getting lower. I hope she'll get one soon. I don't want to find out what she'll do if she's the last in her class. Why, just the other day, Applejack launched into story about her little sister's clearly notorious impatience. Trixie spent a few minutes talking with Applejack, during which she learned quite a bit about the Apple family, and their place in Ponyville. Apparently they had even played a big role in the founding of the town itself. Oh, pony feathers, I ought to get back to work. Applejack trotted back to her stall, giving a friendly wave to a waiting pony. Coming right away, ma'am. She turned her gaze back to Trixie briefly. Say, why don't you swing by the farm later this week? Since you're so cleverly disguised all. I'll introduce you to the rest of my kin. If you'll stay over for supper that'd be even better. That sounds good. Actually, I should get going too. Oh, but for that, do you know any place that would sell soaps? That'll be 4 bits, ma'am. Applejack juggled her tasks as she helped her customer load some apples into her saddlebag, and thought on Trixie's question at the same time. Well, I reckon you'd be talking about them fancy soaps, ain't ya? Then you could try the spag over yonder. That's about the only place I heard of. Oh, ma'am, change. Thanks, Applejack. See you later. Trixie smiled, then added, on a softer tone. And, thanks, Applejack. Letting Applejack chase after her forgetful customer, Trixie continued on her way. Once she was fairly sure she was out of earshot, she let out a joyful squeal. Trixie did it. Trixie randomly bumped into a friend at a market, and had a casual talk. Even if it was such a simple thing, she felt giddy with excitement. It was the first time she had ever had an opportunity to do that, and it felt great, as if she could go anywhere and just run into a friendly face. For the last time, we don't want a free sample. One more step and I'll spray you with it. Trixie smirked. By the sound of it, Rainbow Dash had well and truly had it with waiting around. Unfortunately for Dash, Trixie was perfectly aware she had the whole day free, so she did not feel the least bit guilty about taking her time. On the other hoof, Fluttershy probably did not mind the slower pace, and she knew what Trixie was after already. So far, everything was going much better than Trixie had expected. However, before getting too excited, she had to remind herself that no pony knew it was her, and that was key. Her luck couldn't hold out forever. Somewhere, there were at the very least 3 ponies that Trixie knew would be able to recognize her, and they had already proven they meant no harm. Trixie looked around uneasily, then glanced back at Dash and Fluttershy. She sighed happily, seeing them tailing her brought a bit of peace. Even if something would happen, she could be sure she wasn't alone for it. With renewed courage, Trixie trotted up to the spa. It almost felt out of place, like it belonged somewhere in Canterlot, rather than in Ponyville. Trixie supposes the competition isn't as fierce here. If that was the reason, Trixie idly wondered if that meant the quality of their products was below average. Well, even if that is so, it's still a monopoly. She shrugged, and pushed through the door. At a distance, she could hear Rainbow Dash's voice. Oh, come on. Chapter 83. Redwood. "Oh, come on," Rainbow Dash said, as Trixie stepped into the spa. Groaning in displeasure, she leaned against the wall of the nearest house. "This is taking forever. Isn't she supposed to want to get to the hospital right away?" Well, we left early. Because of this." Fluttershy trotted up beside Rainbow Dash, and gave a quick look around. "You, don't think we should go in there, do you?" "Nah, what's the worst that could happen to her in there? Fick you?" Even though she said it dismissively, the very idea of one made Rainbow Dash shudder. Fluttershy nodded, and brought her attention back to the spa door. "Oh, yes. You're right. Lotus Blossom and Aloe are very nice ponies, but, it's just... they're a little talkative." Fluttershy kept talking quieter and quieter, clearly feeling guilty for bad-mouthing the pair. "Who? Oh, that's their names? I forgot you and Rarity go there." "Huh? Come to think of it, isn't that a weekly thing?" Rainbow Dash tried to sound casual about it, but she had a fairly good grasp on Fluttershy's schedule. Every week, without fail, those two went to the spa, and Rainbow Dash made sure to visit Fluttershy's place right afterwards. So far, she'd never really been able to tell the difference, other than the relaxed expression Fluttershy wore the rest of the day. "That's true. I felt really bad about cancelling on Rarity these past few weeks. But I couldn't leave Trixie alone." She gave Rainbow Dash an apologetic look as she spoke. Rainbow Dash gave a soft nod. Even though Fluttershy didn't say it out loud, she understood there was an implied "or with you" in there. Nurse Redheart would probably have found a way to mobilize the Royal Guard. I guess, but now it should be fine, right? It suddenly occurred to Rainbow Dash that she was planning to take care of Trixie for the rest of the day, unsupervised. Fluttershy was quiet for longer than she perhaps should have been. Apparently she was thinking the question over, as she finally shook her head. "Well, nah, not really. But it will depend on what the tests say." She sounded hesitant, as if she was not convinced no matter what the test was going to say. It hurt to see Fluttershy act that way, as though she did not trust her alone with Trixie either. In all honesty, the more she thought about it, the less Dash trusted herself with the task either. Maybe this was a bad idea. "But I can't call it off now," Trixie was so excited. A warm feeling spread through her chest as she recalled the look on Trixie's face. However that Trichomare managed to look so positively idyllic when she was truly happy, Dash would never understand. Rainbow Dash had already been responsible for shattering that look once before, and she'd crossed Tartarus before she'd let it happen twice. Laying her ears flat against her head, she turned to her precious friend. "Hey, Fluttershy. Do you trust me?" Fluttershy looked conflicted as she listened to Rainbow Dash, biting her lip while she thought it over. Upon that final question though, she surprised Dash, and stepped in close, throwing her hooves around her neck. "Of course I trust you." Hugging Dash tightly against her, Fluttershy shook her head. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel like you're, you know." Rainbow Dash was taken aback by the sudden warmth around her, but quickly returned the gesture, pulled one hoof around Fluttershy. The words did not even truly matter, just the action alone vanquished any feeling of doubt in herself that she had a moment ago. "Thanks, Fluttershy." I. She coughed, and made a half-hearted attempt to pull away. Ponies are staring. Oh. Fluttershy reluctantly pulled away and blushed as she looked straight down at the ground, not even checking around. Which was a good thing too, or she'd have easily detected the lie. "You just remember to go easy on her, on yourself. I don't want either of you hurt. Okay?" Got it. You can count on me, Fluttershy. Oh, hey, there she is. Relieved with the legitimate distraction, Rainbow Dash let out an uneasy breath. That was such a stupid close call, she just wanted to bang her head against the wall for it. Hey, Rarity kind of already knows so. If you like, you could go to the next appointment, and bring Trixie with you. Fluttershy blinked as though it was the first time she had ever heard of such a concept. You mean, make an appointment for 3 instead of 2? That's a great idea. Trixie does seem like she would enjoy that. Heh, I know, I'm a genius. Now come on, we can't lose her. Trixie closed the door behind her. The pleasant jingling sound was gone, and her bags were heavier now, but she couldn't be happier. All she had to do now was get to the hospital and figure out some way to commandeer one of their showers before Dash would return to pick her up. It's been so long since Trixie had her own shampoo. It's too bad Trixie will probably have to hurry, or she would take her sweet time with this. Trixie trotted along the dirt streets, and a reflection in the window told her that her guardians were following behind while chatting with each other. It was difficult to tell from a glance, but neither of them seemed upbeat. Feeling a sting of guilt, Trixie picked up her pace a bit. Perhaps she had been taking too much advantage of them for this trip. Hopefully she could make it up to them by sharing the news of the invitation to Sweet Apple Acres later today. Just the thought of getting to eat some more of the Apple family's cooking had Trixie's mouth watering. As Trixie passed by a dark alley, she suddenly heard a familiar voice. Hello. I'm looking for a doctor, I see Crooked. It sounded like that male mare she had met the other day. Though why she was looking for a doctor in an alley was a mystery to Trixie. If she delivered mail, she should at least know where the hospital was. What was her name? It was pretty, unique. Derpy? Trixie felt a chill run down her spine as she looked into the alley. The memories of her last encounter with one came flooding back, forcing her to involuntarily take a step back. There was a package set down a few steps into the alley, while Derpy searched the place. Doctor, I see Crooked. Derpy called out again. She spoke loud enough that combined with the acoustics of the bare walls it was easy to hear her even from the main street. Some of the ponies passing by behind Trixie snickered and giggled, continuing on their way. Trixie was starting to get a dreadful sense of what was so funny. Maybe it's not here? But the address says 9.6. That's 10, that's 9. It should be here? A frustrated sense of confusion was obvious from Derpy's voice. Doctor, I see Crooked. Hello. Any pony? Another chuckle could be heard from another random passerby, and Trixie scowled, struggling to resist the urge to buck. They were laughing at the white Pegasus. A quick check revealed Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash standing together on the other side of the street, window shopping. With her backup confirmed, Trixie took a deep breath, and stepped into the alley. Something seemed off about the whole thing. The first thing to grab Trixie's attention was the package Derpy had left on the floor. Presumably it was what she was trying to deliver. Trixie read the address label. Ponyville, Main Street, 9.6, Dr. I. C. Croquette. In disbelief, Trixie read the label again, twice more. She could feel her blood boil. Sure, she didn't really know the Pegasus, but she seemed nice enough. What impudent fool thought this was funny? Of course there was no return address. The ponies in the street were unlikely to be the actual culprits, as none of them hung around. Whoever set up the prank was probably not around unless they were content to wait all day for the mail, just to watch Derpy unwittingly humiliate herself, until she figured it out. The idea that she wouldn't be able to find the prankster just infuriated Trixie more. Just because she's a little different? Doctor, I say. Derpy. Silence. Trixie snapped, before kicking the package with all her might, aiming to send it across the alley. Unfortunately, it barely budged. The weight, sound, and painful feeling in her leg gave away it probably contained just a solid block of wood. Ugh. Trixie hissed pained, doing her best to keep her voice down, and limped towards the mailmare. Shocked, Droppy whirled around, her eyes wide as she watched Trixie stalk closer. Teeth Trixie? It seemed wise to Trixie not to yell anymore, especially since she knew the sound didn't hear Carrie too well. Despite her rage, she forced herself to a low tone, but she was unable to keep the anger out of her voice. Trixie's glad she caught you. Be quiet, Trixie doesn't want ponies to hear. What kind of fool would fall for such an obvious ploy? Caught? Ploy? Droppy's ears folded flat against her head while she backed away from Trixie, her eyes growing ever wider. I'm sorry. I didn't do anything, I didn't tell any pony, I swear. What? Trixie doesn't care about that. Don't you get it? Trixie is here to put an end to your foolishness. She made a sweeping gesture with her hoof. Now, come here. Trixie trotted towards the package and between them. Trembling, Droppy flared out her wings the moment Trixie took another step, and leaped into sky. No. Stay away. With that, she immediately flew off with a speed that would probably have done Rainbow Dash proud. The strange reaction caught Trixie off guard. Wait, what? No. Come back here. She called after Droppy, pointing her hoof at the package, but she went completely ignored, or at least disobeyed. Hey, are you okay? Rainbow Dash's voice called from behind. Trixie looked over her shoulder at her escorts. Naturally, they had followed her when she went into the alley, though a little later. Trixie looked from Dash to Fluttershy, then up at the sky. She was still not quite sure of what just happened. She only wanted to help. Yes. Trixie is fine. Are you sure? Yeah, you look really mad. Fluttershy trotted closer, and briefly glanced at the package that Trixie was standing over. Trixie is fine. She gave the package another, though more careful, kick. More to release some frustration over the situation and her failure, than to actually damage the accursed thing. Then quickly turned around. Let's just go. Go on ahead. Rainbow Dash motioned towards the road. We'll catch up. It did not sit right with Trixie. While she walked, she barely even paid attention to her surroundings anymore. Droppy reacted so strangely, as if she expected Trixie to just assault her in a dark alley. Where did she ever get an idea like? Oh. Curses. Of course Droppy would think that. She was the one that told Trixie about that rumor in the first place. Though Trixie had thought that their meeting would have changed the mayor's mind, apparently it did not change it that much. It's just a misunderstanding. Okay, Trixie, next time she comes to bring the mail you just have to clear this up. Should be easy enough. Now quit worrying about this and just focus on the hoe. Gah. Trixie's muzzle collided with the thin air, causing her to stumble backwards and collapse onto her haunches while she got her bearings. Rubbing her sore snout, Trixie was pleased to find she had sustained 2 blows to the head today, and though they did hurt, neither brought on a headache. She looked up at the oddly hard air. Upon closer inspection, Trixie realized she had located the glass front doors of the hospital, which brought a completely new thing to worry about. Oh, Luna. If Dash saw that, Trixie will never hear the end of it. Waha, ha, ha. Chapter 84. Redundant. Sitting in the waiting room, Trixie absent-mindedly turned the page of a magazine that must have been of considerable archaeological importance at this point. The Ponyville Hospital. Trixie had a quiet chuckle as she recalled how fearful she was initially of the idea that she had ended up there, yet now it marked a safe haven. In hindsight, it really had made no sense to even suspect any hospital would be decorated the way Fluttershy's bedroom was. As soon as they had arrived, Fluttershy had to turn back to take care of the animals. Rainbow Dash stayed a while longer, and Trixie suspected it was to ensure the hospital was really safe, but then she made some obvious excuse and left. As much as Rainbow Dash was a horrible brat, She had been at Trixie's side approximately half a second after her collision with the door, and helped her up. Trixie just wished she could have done so without laughing the entire time. Surprisingly, neither Manners nor Red Heart were involved with Trixie's appointment. Possibly this had to do with them wanting to avoid any chance of running into Rainbow Dash. Instead, an elderly unicorn introduced himself as Dr. Shot, and announced he would help her through the magical portion of the test first. With a name like that, Trixie could only imagine he was awfully popular with the foals. Fortunately, she was not required to get any shots herself. The tests themselves were boring, drawn-out repetitions of the simplest forms of magic, with wires attached to her horn. Apparently all they really wanted to examine was the flow of her magic, as Trixie was not even asked to cast a spell, merely to prepare to do so. Such simple tasks felt like an insult. What insolence to make the most powerful unicorn in Equestria go through such menial trials. Trixie was tempted to simply begin casting spells for the sake of getting an answer quicker. Either she was fine and the tests could stop, or she was not fine, in which case she was at a hospital already. Trixie had loudly complained about it, of course. Unfortunately no pony had tried to call her bluff, but the quiet smile and nod she got from Dr. Shot might actually have been worse. The only thing that gave her the patience to carry through with it, was the thought that once she was done, she would finally get to spend some time alone with Dash. If possible, she preferred to do so without putting herself in a magic-induced coma. Even thinking of herself as the most magical felt more hollow than it usually did, because she knew full well that every pony knew Twilight Sparkle was her better, in terms of raw magical power. Most ponies wouldn't even make the distinction. Once the magic tests had concluded, Trixie was brought to the physical examination waiting room. Apparently this was Nurse Red Heart's department. To Trixie's annoyance, she was unable to go straight in. Apparently, Nurse Red Heart had neglected to clear her entire schedule for Trixie, thus she was with another patient for the time being. The waiting room itself only housed Trixie, and a young, grey-coated unicorn filly who had already been there when Trixie arrived. It struck Trixie as odd. Why was there a lone filly in the hospital? Perhaps she was waiting on some pony? All she had with her was a brown paper bag. With a sigh, Trixie put down the magazine. It was impossible to even pretend she had any interest in it. She felt like she'd be less bored if she just stared at the wall for 10 minutes. However, it seemed some pony else had beaten her to the punch. The filly was staring at the wall with a zoned-out look of boredom on her face. This just will not do. A bored filly in the same room as the greatest entertainer Equestria would ever know. Unthinkable. From that moment on, Trixie had made up her mind. Though without any actual magic she would have to be creative. For a moment, Trixie observed her surroundings. Since it was just a waiting room there was not much of anything, but there were one or two tricks she could do quite easily. A short setup session later, Trixie was ready. It had been a while since this was part of her routine, but Trixie was fairly sure she remembered how to juggle. The only trick to it was to account for the time limit on her motor skills. Starting with a stapler, Trixie gave it a few practice rounds before she added a matchbox, and finally, an empty paper cup to the mix. For a few seconds, Trixie gave an admirable performance, but her lack of practice quickly made her fumble each item in turn. It took a desperate scramble to catch the stapler before it hit the floor, while the rest bounced off it. A soft giggling from the other side of the room caused Trixie to perk up her ears. She looked over to the little filly, holding her hooves over her mouth in an attempt not to let on she was laughing at her. Trixie felt a smile form on her lips as she leaned down to gather the items back up, and gave the filly a glance as she did. "Oh, you like that, huh?" Trixie is not very good at juggling anymore, but she bets she can read your mind. Want to find out? The little unicorn gasped as she was spotted and looked to her left and right quickly to check if she was being addressed, then looked back to Trixie. "I'm not supposed to listen to strangers. My mom says." "Oh, well that's very respo. Wait, did you say listen? Wouldn't it normally be talk?" Trixie blinked puzzled. She was fairly sure the expression was the same all over Equestria. Shaking her head, the filly replied enthusiastically. It's listen. Mom says talking never hurt any pony, but listening can. She's really smart. Trixie chuckled as she thought it over. It was a bit odd, but she supposed it did make sense in a weird way. So you can talk, but you don't have to listen when Trixie tells you to do something. Yep. The little filly squeaked. Trixie understands. Well, then Trixie won't ask you to do anything. Do you still want to see the trick? She asked, before writing a quick note, and folding it up. The filly thought about it for a split second, then quickly nodded. You are gonna say what I think? I wanna see. Smiling, Trixie lined up a row of 6 items on the floor in front of her, a stapler, matchbox, paper cup, magazine, coffee mug, and finally a pencil. Well, there is no limit to what Trixie can do, but how about we start easy? Can you think of a number between 1 and 6? I can think of lots of numbers. The filly proclaimed proudly. I can count all the way to 100. Sometimes. This one time, Miss cheerily asked if I could do math on the board, and she said did I could. Trixie giggled with the filly's enthusiasm, noting how quick she was to get sidetracked. That's really impressive at your age. When Trixie was that old she only got to 10. So, if Trixie asked you for just one number, what would you say? With her options limited, the filly's brow furrowed for a moment before she came to a decision. 2. Cause lots of good things come in twas, or lots of twas. 2. Is it? Trixie agrees that's a good number. How many letters are in 2? T, W, O. 3. While the filly spelled out the numbers, Trixie motioned at the line of items and counted with the filly. That's right. Now what item do you get if you take the third one? She let her hoof hover over the paper cup. The filly pointed at the cup. That one. Smiling, Trixie held out the note she'd written at the start. Trixie bet he can read really good too. What does this say? Unfolding the note, the filly looked at the piece of paper with deep concentration. Though whether that was because the filly was not a good reader, or because Trixie's mouthwriting was atrocious, she couldn't say. Him. You will choose the paper cup is what it says. Wait. I do have a paper cup. She held up the cup with both hooves, her eyes wide in amazement as she gasped. If only all of Trixie's audiences were so easily impressed. Trixie smiled warmly while she nodded. The great and omniscient Trixie knows all. She made sure to put some theatrics in her voice. It wasn't as if she had much to fear if it was just her and the filly. What's "oh my scent" mean? The filly asked. Chuckling, Trixie briefly debated if she should correct her. Omniscient means all-knowing, she said, while cleaning up the floor and getting the items back on the small table at her side. Oh, but that's redundant, she stated matter-of-factly. Taken off guard by the comment, Trixie nearly dropped the stapler again. Trixie begs your pardon? You said the same thing twice. Mom says that's called redundant. Yes, Trixie supposes it is. She'll watch out for that in the future, thank you. Trixie was still not entirely sure what just transpired. Did Trixie just get corrected by a foal? She shook the thought out of her head. The last thing she needed was to get upstaged by her whole, tiny audience. So, what's your name? Dinky, what's yours? Dinky said, and set the paper cup down, exchanging it for the brown paper bag, and sticking her muzzle inside. Smirking a little, Trixie considered calling herself something else entirely just to see the reaction, but it seemed best not to confuse Dinky too much. Trixie. What do you have there, Dinky? Lunch. My mom made them for me. She pulled out a blueberry muffin. Good things in 2C. That's just one. Oh, it was 2 before, but I ate one already. Dinky blushed. You still have 2 halves? Trixie laughed, switching seats so she was sitting next to a Dinky, and looked down at the muffin. Say, Dinky, want to see another trick? Trixie knows a good one. She motioned to the muffin. Can Trixie use that? Dinky looked from Trixie to the muffin and back, clearly weighing her options between having herself a lovely meal, and seeing another one of Trixie's tricks. Finally, she put the muffin back in the bag and held it out for Trixie with an expectant look in her eyes. Okay, Miss Trixie. A warm feeling swept through Trixie, one that she hadn't felt in far too long, as Dinky chose her act over the meal. Of course she would give the muffin back right after the trick, but it was a clear sign that her audience of one was really enjoying her performance. Trixie's missed this so much. Trixie took the bag and briefly inspected it, turning it over and back, then set it down between them. All right, now prepare to be amazed at the power of Trixie. Drabby called out in shock, standing in the door opening of the examination room with Nurse Redheart beside her. Her white eyes locked squarely on Trixie, then quickly to Dinky and back. Hey, Mom. Dinky waved excitedly. This was just good. Apparently Trixie was going to get her chance to explain herself much faster than she anticipated. She even had the good fortune of running into, and getting along with, Drabby's daughter, so this was going to be much easier than she thought it would. But first, the show had to go on. Trixie wouldn't want to disappoint Dinky. Oh, hey, Drabby. You are just in time. Trixie smiled at Drabby, then added, Trixie is just about to make your muffin disappear. She turned her attention back to Dinky, noting the shocked expression on her face at the idea of losing her treat. Ah, Don. Umpief. Trixie got cut off as Drabby bumped into her, snatching Dinky up in her hooves. No. Drabby cried out. She looked incredibly panicked for a simple magic trick. She held Dinky close, and immediately flew off. Trixie had not thought it was possible, but Drabby was actually even faster this time, even though she was holding the filly. The entire thing was over within less than 2 seconds, leaving Trixie shaken as she started to realize Drabby was not coming back. She looked down at the blueberry muffin she was left with. It was just a trick. What did Trixie do wrong? Chapter 85. Re-examine. One moment, Trixie was having a nice time playing with Dinky, keeping the foal entertained while she waited her turn in the waiting room. The next found Drabby and Trixie exchanging a few innocent words, only for Drabby to panickingly grab the filly and take off. In her haste, Drabby had nearly knocked Trixie off of her hooves. She tried to go over what she'd said to Drabby to upset her so much, but it didn't make sense. All she spoke about to Drabby was the muffin, and she had left that behind. Though it was possible she left it behind because Drabby thought Trixie wanted it. Drabby couldn't have thought Trixie was trying to rob her, could she? Looking down at the muffin in her hooves, Trixie felt her chest ache. She had just tried to be nice to Dinky and Drabby, but it somehow backfired again. Why is it so difficult? Trixie didn't even do anything wrong this time. Trixie? Nurse Red called out, drawing Trixie out of her thoughts. She had almost forgotten the nurse was there. Huh? Yes. Trixie blinked slowly, then raised her gaze up from the muffin to Nurse Redheart. To Trixie's surprise, there was a very dark look on the nurse's face, sending a chill down her spine. What is wrong with you? Picking on Drabby, of all ponies? She gets enough of that without you helping out. Nurse Redheart snapped, the anger clear in her voice. She told me such awful things about you, that I was sure you had a doppelganger, but here you are. I have half a mind to kick you out right now. Trixie's eyes widened as Nurse Redheart yelled at her, and pushed herself as far back in her chair as possible. This was supposed to be a great day, but everything just kept going wrong. It was just too much for Trixie. She broke down. The image of the mare's angry face started to blur. Trixie didn't do anything. She choked out, feeling the tears run down her cheeks. Freezing mid-rant, Nurse Redheart quickly took 2 steps back. From the look on her face, she had been prepared for an argument, not this. She still shot back, but much of the venom had dropped from her voice. What do you mean, you didn't? I saw you, didn't I? Sus or Trixie do what? She tried to wipe her eyes with her wrist as she spoke, but failed to make much headway in keeping her vision clear. Trixie was just doing tricks for Dinky. Why does every pony keep thinking the worst of Trixie? Or saying Trixie's done things she hasn't? It wasn't fair at all. The list of supposed crimes Trixie had committed against ponykind just kept growing, but she knew she'd not done anything wrong. It was nearly enough to make her doubt her own sanity. At least if she was a psychopath this whole thing would make sense. Nurse Redheart hesitated for a moment, but finally spoke. I saw how worried Dinky was. Why did you say you were going to make her disappear? But Trixie never said that. Trixie hiccuped, and held up the muffin for Nurse Redheart to see. Trixie said muffin, not Dinky. This one, see. They don't even sound the same. For a moment, Nurse Redheart was silent, but her expression ran through a gambit of emotions. First was shock, then came barely suppressed mirth, and finally, it settled on concern. Oh Celestia. I guess that's plausible. Well, if that's true, then this was all a misunderstanding. Though it sounded good, something in the mayor's voice betrayed she was not entirely convinced. Still, she offered a hoof to Trixie, and smiled kindly. You look like you're in need of a refill. How about we get you some water, would you like that? Though on some level, Trixie knew Nurse Redheart was trying to help. She loathed being condescended to. Trixie is not a small foal, she growled, and rubbed her eyes again. This was probably not her most intimidating moment, as proven by the very unimpressed look Nurse Redheart gave her. Water sounds good. As it turned out, some water really did do Trixie a lot of good. It calmed her down, and gave her some time to compose herself, before Nurse Redheart led her into the examination room. There was no further talk of the misunderstanding, as neither of them were comfortable bringing it up again. It suited Trixie just fine. Redheart was not the one she wanted to talk to about it anyway. The physical examination was not much more interesting to Trixie than the magical one had been. However, she had to admit it was a lot more complicated. It started off with a few simple questions about her age and weight, and, after a skeptical look from Nurse Redheart, an actual weighing. The results were subject to a hefty protest, and swearing Redheart to secrecy on penalty of death. Shockingly, not getting much exercise for a couple of weeks, coupled with eating better than Trixie was used to, had left her just a bit greater than she would have liked. The first actual tests involved Nurse Redheart shining a little light in her eyes, ears, and mouth. Once Redheart was apparently satisfied, she moved on to testing reflexes with a small hammer, followed by asking Trixie to cough while she listened to her chest. Though Trixie would never say so out loud, she kind of enjoyed the attention. It gave a nice feeling, to be touched. Even if it was completely mundane, it left a tingling feeling that made her want to swing by that spa again after this and get an actual massage. That sounds pretty good actually. Once the thought had entered Trixie's mind, there was no getting rid of it. She barely took notice of the rest of the exam, and merely imagined herself laying down while those two spa ponies worked on her back. Though at some point during the fantasy, that Trixie could not remember, they had morphed into Dash and Fluttershy. All too soon, Nurse Redheart's voice ruined it. Trixie? Hello. I said, we're done. Oh, right. Trixie knew that. Feeling her face flush, Trixie quickly trotted to the door. Well, goodbye. Don't you want to know the results? Nurse Redheart called after her. Trixie froze in her tracks. Of course, how could she have forgotten about that? Oh, Trixie assumed it would be like the magic exam. You know, analyze date, air data. Results pending, all that. She turned around sheepishly to drop back to Redheart. Nurse Redheart shook her head. You really were out of it. I already told you Dr. Shutt would bring his results in any moment. He actually came in, greeted you, gave me the report and walked out. Trixie was, preoccupied. Sighing, Red Heart laid a file down on the table, flicking through the pages. Clearly you were. Well, I can already tell you that, physically, you are in good health. Especially when considering you have pretty much just been lying in bed the past couple of weeks. Most Earth ponies I examined would be jealous. Grinning, Trixie puffed up her chest with pride. Well, Trixie is pretty amazing. She used to travel all around Equestria, you know, pulling a whole stage cart no less. It was a little strange to be boasting about doing physical labor that she hated, but any port in a storm. Nurse Red Heart rolled her eyes, but kept smiling. Yes, well, good news then, you are healing well. So well in fact, that you are now officially cleared for using basic level magic. You keep this up and you'll be back on the road in a few weeks. Huh. Trixie cheered. Trixie knew it. Magic at last. Her first thought was to levitate the nearest object and swing it around in celebration, but the prognosis stopped her in her tracks. Back on the road in a few weeks? Well, yes. I know, you are in a hurry to leave, but I'm sorry I really cannot in good conscience clear you to take a trip like that as you are. But don't worry, it won't be long now. You will get to leave all this nasty business behind you soon. Trixie folded her ears back. Ha. Yeah. Trixie can't wait to get out of this one-horse town. Now, I just want to stress that while you are recovering well, you are still especially vulnerable to blows to the head. Every pony is of course, but it is especially dangerous if you're still recovering from a concussion. If you need a visualization, an easy rule of hoof is to just assume anything will hit you twice as hard. Trixie no longer had her full attention on the conversation, instead she couldn't help lingering on those words. A few weeks. Fortunately, the important stuff that Red Heart tried to tell Trixie were all things that she already knew, thanks to Fluttershy. Even better, her trip here had proven that she was not in danger from minor impacts anymore, and the lack of a headache following the Druppy incidents indicated that stress was no longer going to bring about migraines either. Trixie knows. Is there anything else? Nurse Red Heart shook her head. Nothing worth mentioning right now, just keep eating healthy, and try to get a little more exercise in. You can tell Fluttershy it's doctor's orders if she tries to stop you, but don't overdo it. Trixie just wants to make sure, everything we discussed, you are not allowed to say a word about it, right? Yes, everything we talk about, and your medical information, all of it is confidential. This was good. The less ponies had any real idea of what kind of shape she was in the better. Though there was not really a guarantee. Red Heart could let something slip unintentionally, but more importantly than that, someone with sufficient authority could simply look into her file. That is acceptable. That's all then. Do you think Trixie could use a shower? Red Heart looked caught by surprise. Her eyes briefly ran over Trixie, then she shook her head slowly. No. You look clean, and you smelled fine. Nah, not that it's something I pay attention to. Just some patients have a, musk. Trixie blinked. It took a moment for the bit to drop, but once it did she drug a hoof down her face. Ugh, not like that. Trixie is asking permission to use a shower. Red Heart's snow-white fur did absolutely nothing to hide her embarrassment. The red in her face shone through like a beacon. Oh. Yes, of course. Go right ahead. She made a vague gesture with her hoof towards the door leading back to the waiting room. Just keep going and take the second door on the right. She seemed very eager to get rid of Trixie. Thank you. Sniggering, Trixie made her way towards the door. Pausing at the threshold, she looked over her shoulder. As casual as she could, she asked her question. One more thing. Why did the letter refer to Trixie as Lula Moon? This was it. She was going to find out just who was behind this, pulling unknown strings. Oh, well. Nurse Redheart paged through the file and held out one of the pages. Trixie recognized it as her patient chart, though it was marred with hoofprints and creases from the tough time it had when it was used to chase Rainbow Dash out of her room. Trixie Doe. The great and powerful Lula Moon suspected trauma, stress and magic-induced brain damage. Coma. Keep under observation. In case of change, alert Nurse Redheart. Keep Rainbow Dash out. It was mostly the same as Trixie remembered it, and a small grin played on her lips as she read the command to keep Dash at bay. It had not done much good. What drew her attention the most though was the fresh addition to her name, the most edited part of the chart by far. It was Nurse Manna's idea. She felt just awful about what happened, and she was telling me about the argument you had with her. You know, before you left. She remembered you were upset that she called you Doe, and said it was the least she could do for you. Trixie looked down at the chart, then up at Redheart, then finally back down at the chart, staring at her corrected name, just as she had demanded. At last she had discovered who the mastermind was that knew her real name. It was official, she was an idiot. Chapter 86. Ready. Carefully, Trixie stepped into the shower. It was not nearly as clinical as she would have expected a hospital shower to be. Instead, it could almost be described as cozy, if one could ever describe a bathroom that way. Trixie supposes Fluttershy would qualify. Currently, Trixie's day was not quite going as planned. Granted, not all of the changes were negative. Applejack was a familiar face she had been hoping to meet up with again, and Inky along with Aloe and Lotus helped Trixie start to think not every pony in Ponyville was actually out to get her. And to top off the pleasant surprises she had had, Trixie was even allowed to use her magic again. Even so, many other things popped up that Trixie had not expected she would have to worry about. The rumors were bad enough on their own, but the misunderstandings with Droppy were sure to add fuel to the fire. As long as no pony knew who she was, it was fine, but that couldn't last forever. Those issues, however, paled in comparison to the best, and at the same time, worst news she had received that day: she would be fully recovered soon. Shaking her head, Trixie resolved not to think about anything beyond enjoying her shower for the next 10 minutes. At last. This is going to be so good. Trixie giggled with glee while she set the shampoo bottle down in front of her, adjusting its position by nudging it with her hooves until it was perfectly centered. Once she was satisfied, she planted her hooves on the floor of the shower. This will be the last time Trixie uses her hooves for anything. Everything was ready. She took a deep breath. It felt like she had not possessed her magic in years, and there was the nagging worry in the back of her mind that she would not remember how to use it properly. What would she even do for a living, with her life, if she couldn't wield it perfectly? The very first tingling that traveled through her horn felt intimately familiar, as though it was trying to tell her that she was fooling herself. The magic had never left to begin with. Magic was who she was, after all. The gentle feeling grew to a warm glow. Trixie could see the walls shimmer with a comforting orchid reflection, her own personal aurora. Keeping her hooves firmly on the ground, she lifted the shampoo bottle over her head. It could not even be called a conscious effort. The shine simply enveloped the bottle the moment she looked at it, and followed her every whim to a T. Trixie simply could not stop smiling as she drew a long dark blue string of thick liquid from the bottle, releasing the scent of blueberries. In a manner using delicate balancing of force and direction, she allowed it to snake through the air towards her mane. Every slight motion within the glow was one she was intimately aware of, even after it left her field of view. Any lesser unicorn might have fumbled such a feat, or at least she assumed so. There were not many opportunities to observe another unicorn's showering habits after all. As the last of the blue snakes slithered out of her view, Trixie closed her eyes. She wouldn't be needing them anymore. Concentrating all of her attention on just feeling her magic aura, she let the shampoo braid through her mane. Although Trixie was loving the sensation of spreading the foam around, Something was missing. Oh. Water. Well, let's take care of that. As fantastic and magnificent a unicorn she was, she had not the faintest idea where to find the faucet. Curses. Begrudgingly, Trixie opened one eye. Easily locating the faucet, a tendril of her magic lazily slithered over to it, and let the warm water flow. The blow to her ego was soothed away along with the foam while the warmth washed over her, electing a long, satisfied sigh. As long as Trixie was commandeering a shower, she supposed she might as well claim the rest of the room while she was at it. Though the hospital beds were below her standards, they were still more comfy than the floor. 2 floating towels rubbed the moisture out of her fur and mane while Trixie sat upright on the bed, just watching the dancing pieces of fabric with a smile. She did not truly need to use her magic to dry off, but that hardly mattered. One did not truly need to eat peanut butter chocolate muffins instead of gruel either. If there was ever any doubt in Trixie's mind, her short hiatus had confirmed her suspicion to a certain fact: magic truly was the best of all things. How the other races even managed without it their entire lives was beyond her. How long until Dash gets back here? Now that she thought about it, how was Dash going to know where to even pick her up? Perhaps she should be out at the door, waiting for her. Although, it was not as if she was going to do any such thing before she was done here. Exchanging the towels for a brush and mirror, Trixie set to work on fixing her mane. Although levitation was often considered a basic spell, it was deceptive. The actual difficulty of the spell increased exponentially with the number of items manipulated. Any more than 2, and Trixie feared she might risk hurting herself again. Staring into the mirror while long strokes tamed her mane, her mind wandered back to what Nurse Redheart had told her: in a few weeks her recovery would be complete. Originally, Trixie could not wait to get away, and the injury prevented that, but somewhere along the way she had lost the desire to leave. More than that, it had been replaced by a burning need to stay. She loved everything about staying with Fluttershy, even the odd chores. Accompanying the gentle mare on her daily routine was part of a serene ritual by now that she gladly went through. Tea time in a quiet peace, or sharing stories while smiling and laughing together, even complaining about her fumbling apologies, and countless small little things, all of it felt important, and Trixie didn't want to do without. No. Trixie is not just going to up and go. What are they going to do? Force the great and powerful Trixie to leave? Watching her reflection bite on her lip, Trixie tried to reason with herself. Trixie wants to stay, but once Trixie is better, she has no right to. It was not a matter of being forced out. Trixie could not even imagine Fluttershy asking her to leave, nor did she even wish to. It was just too painful of an image for Trixie's mind to conjure up. However, she was painfully aware she was costing Fluttershy precious bits. Every day she stayed after her recovery would be blatant freeloading. If Trixie tries to stay, she must contribute. Yes, that's it. Trixie will just have to make bits somehow, then Trixie can easily stay. But what can Trixie even do? Her stage is gone, and even if she had it, every pony hates her. As if they would ever come watch a show to shower Trixie with bits, it won't be anything more than rotten fruit. If Trixie is lucky. She watched her reflection's ears droop while she fruitlessly thought on the problem. Even if she somehow got back on her hooves, she was a traveling magician, which meant she would still have to leave to do her job. She might be able to come through Ponyville once or twice a year. Just the thought made her chest ache. She didn't want to be away from them that long. Oh. Wait. She exclaimed and perked up eagerly. Maybe Trixie can bring Dash along? She likes to show off, and Trixie is sure she'd make a good entertainer under her guidance. Trixie could be with her all the time. She wrapped her hooves into a self-hug, trying to contain her excitement with the idea. Yes. And Fluttershy could, get some animals to join in the act. Or cook, something like that. Maybe she'll even be confident enough to tell a few stories. The energy slowly left her again as she started to think about the logistics of it. Her brilliant plan meant making her friends give up their jobs in the first place, and somehow more than triple the profits of her show if all three of them were living off of it. Maybe not. Dash just got promoted. She probably makes more bits than Trixie ever did, and there's no way Fluttershy would agree to leave the animals behind. Sighing, Trixie let the brush drop into her saddlebags, pulling out a comb instead. It was depressing. She could not think of any good solution to her problem. Pushing the worry away, she focused instead on putting the final touches on her mane, ensuring it would be back to its full, stage-worthy glory for her date. Conjuring up the image of what Dash's face would be like, once she was done, brought a smile to her face. That's right. Trixie shouldn't worry about this right now. Dash is giving Trixie a chance, so Trixie has to show up at her best. She dropped the comb back into the bag and brought out a small spray bottle in its stead. There will be time to worry about this after Trixie makes sure Dash realizes this is the best decision she ever made. Levitating the tiny perfume bottle in front of her, Trixie smiled with satisfaction. It was a lovely scent that was sure to wow Dash, or so she hoped. Finding the exact same mixture as the one that was lost to the Ursa attack had taken a few tries, but the Spaponies had been very helpful and patient with her. Getting off the bed, Trixie spritzed the air in front of her with the small bottle and trotted through it, letting the familiar scent envelope her. It had a strong, lingering fragrance of West Equestria elmwood, and, for a little kick, there was a slight hint of campfire smoke weaved through it. Smiling, Trixie sat and savored the memories the scent brought along with it. Her stage and wagon had been made of the same resilient wood, stable and reliable until the end. The smoky hints underlying the perfume brought up thoughts of her time on the stage. This same smell would surround her throughout her act as she hid her illusions and castings among the clouds of smoke she tripped from various panels on her stage. It was playful and unpredictable, something Trixie liked to think herself as. After a moment, Trixie collected herself. She stared into the mirror with determination. Okay, Trixie. This is it. Dash won't know what hit her.